how to graph the cosine function as far as using amplitude and vertical shift is concerned there. Again, graphing cosine, there's not a whole lot of new stuff here, just a small variation on graphing sine. They're very much, they have basically similar ideas in there, just a little bit different on how we start the graph. So that's what we're going to take a look at here, is how to do that. So on here, again, very similar to graphing the sine function. The difference here is that cosine doesn't keep track of how far up you would be on like a Ferris wheel or something. It's graphing instead left to right, how far you are when you move left to right. And that's because, again, cosine is dealing with, your adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent here being the x values, because that's adjacent to the hypotenuse, which again is 1. So in this case, cosine tracks adjacent over hypotenuse, or cosine just tracks the x values left to right on there as we move around, right? That's what that does. So in here, when we go to look at a cosine graph, I'm going to pull up that same thing that we had yesterday. Here, I just have sine up here. And again, we know that sine goes up and down. It's tracking how vertical that is. But a cosine graph, on the other hand, what that does, and so I'm going to turn off sine and turn on the cosine graph here. I have to graph it a little bit differently. I've kind of moved it down into this section so that we can change the horizontal component into a vertical component, because graphs go vertically, we want to track horizontal. So kind of have to shift that around a little bit. But here we can see it does basically the same thing, right? It's going to make the same type of graph, just maybe shifted over a little bit. And that's the only difference between a sine and cosine graph. They look exactly the same, just one is shifted over a little bit. So in here, when we go to actually doing some examples of how we'd graph those, the setup is exactly the same as we would for a sine graph. Here we have 2 cosine of x minus 3, same type of thing, right? -3, that there is our vertical shift. So here I'm going to go ahead and put a line down at -3, 1, 2, 3, just like we did on the example with sine. Here I would take that, move that over. Let's make it a little bit thicker and dotted so we can see that, and we'll make it orange so it matches. That's -3. Amplitude is 2. Still, that's just changing the size of it. It's going to go from that -3 spot up to and down to. That's all it's going to do. So pretty easy to put in there. Here I'm going to go up from our -3 spot up to, there's 1 spot here. So I'm just going to make that line not overly big. Again, let's make it dotted blue, so that it matches with that, because that's our idea here. We're going to take this 2 as our amplitude. Let's make sure we put that in, so when we look back at our notes, we know what we were doing. We went up 2 on that case, and we should also go down 2 as well. From the middle, 1, 2, and we'll drop that. So there's kind of the range of where that cosine graph is going to be. So the only difference is, here let's put a curve in. Difference with cosine is that we're going to start in a slightly different spot than sine. Sine, we were tracking the height, and we'd start our height at 0 and then sort of move up, come back to 0, and then go negative and go underneath. Cosine, we're tracking our left to right spot. So when we look at a circle, we actually start. So if we look here, when we start on our cosine graph, we start over here at the largest x value possible. And then we start decreasing that x value until it becomes -1, and then we re-increase the x value back to +1. So the only difference here is where we start the cosine graph. So cosine starts up here at the highest possible spot, because that's the farthest to the right. So we say that's the farthest away that it's going to go. And so that's what we would go to here. We'd start at the highest spot, and then it's going to kind of back up. It's going to have an x value of 0 when we hit that 90 degree. It won't have moved anymore, so it's back to the kind of middle of the x values. At 180, it's the farthest to the left that it can go. So there we would put it at its lowest point, and then it kind of comes back around to the middle and then back up. So it sort of makes kind of the same shape. It just starts in a slightly different spot. And if we wanted to make kind of the back portion here, it would do a very similar thing like this. So it makes the same type of wave. It kind of looks the same. Here I know it's not rounded in that middle spot, but that's what it does. It just starts at a slightly different spot. Same type of graph, same looking thing, just starts at a different spot there. So let's make it green. We'll make that really thick so we can see that's where the cosine graph would be. Okay? But otherwise, the rules are the same as a sine graph. It just starts in a different spot. So we'll do one more example here. I'll put one more on here. Again, okay, here's our spot. So we don't want to color that in, but we'll make it orange. And we'll say, all right, let's put an orange line at +1. That's where the middle of the graph is going to be at. So we'll put that there. Okay, middle vertical shift, +1. The amplitude, again, in this case, we're just going to talk through that amplitude, same as it was yesterday. -3 is our amplitude. So we go up 3, down 3 from that point. So we go up 1, 2, 3. There's where the highest point of the graph should go, is actually at 4 because that's 3 higher than 1. So let's make that dotted because it's not truly a part of the graph. And then we'll put this down here. So we're here, go down 1, 2, 3 spots down to this one. I suppose we should make both of those be blue so that we know what we're talking about. Okay. Difference here, again, cosine just starts at a high point. Sine starts in the middle. Cosine starts at a high point. But here, since it's negative, it will actually flip that over. And so we'll start down low. Again, if you forgot that, you could always, get done, right click and just do a vertical flip on that by rotating it. But here again, we go here, 90 back to the middle, 180, it's going to be back to here. And it's just going to keep repeating that wave then over and over and over on that part. So I'm not going to do the whole thing. Again, you just need to do one part of the wave. So really, if you just wanted to go to 360, that would be fine there also. Okay, so that's how you graph cosine. Basically the same as graphing a sine graph, just a little bit different. Same thing as your assignment from yesterday. Just go through, practice doing those cosine graphs. If you have any questions, let me know on that one, and send me an email or whatnot. Otherwise, good luck.